Welcome to The Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. On today's episode, I have Ruth Chandler Cook, the founder of HireHer, a recruiting platform with a focus on creating a more diverse and inclusive workforce. Listen in as Ruth shares why she started HireHer and how they're working on creating a more equitable hiring process. Stay tuned through the end to find out how you can listen to Ruth in person at DC Startup Week in September. I'm glad that we're here.
Me too.
So, for people listening, I have Ruth from HireHer. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you. Awesome to be here.
Very excited to have you on the podcast. I like to start with just a little background, maybe from your perspective, a little bit about what you're up to, what HireHer is, and what's going on in your world.
Yeah, so HireHer is a company that's committed to connecting diverse talent to innovative industries faster. And we do that a couple of ways. We do it through our technology and also through our people solutions so that there's kind of an improved career acquisition and talent management solution for everyone. So that sounds like a lot, but what it means is that we want to make it easier for people to connect and have deeper connections. And we also want to make it easier for companies to create a culture and environment that's conducive to a diverse workforce. And so we need to do that in kind of a holistic fashion, not just through the tech, but through building community, creating opportunity for sponsorship and mentorship, and also for responsible policies and practices.
I love that. I really love the idea of building community. Mm-hmm. Something I think about a lot when we look at sort of the world we're in, the business sort of context that we're in 2018. You know, the lack of community, I think, has led to a lot of the stressors, you know, in corporations and for people. I'd be curious, what got you started with HireHer and what kind of pulled you into this?
Yeah, that's actually an awesome question. And one of the things that really inspired me to start this work, and I've talked a lot about my sister Lynn, you know, which is sometimes when I share this with people, they feel like, oh, it's like a sad story. But to me, it's super inspirational, life-changing experience for me and a lot of women. And I believe it's going to ultimately change the world, you know, so pie in the sky. But I believe that, you know. And so, but my sister, electronics engineer at NASA, had experienced a lot of challenges working in traditionally male-dominated industries as a Black woman and as an engineer. And so when I lost her in 2014, you know, she spent a lot of time when she was sick talking about the challenges she felt rather than discussing things that I thought would have been top of mind for someone that, you know, knows that their situation isn't as bright, you know? And so that was super inspirational to me to try to fix the problem. So I've worked as a number of years as a strategic human capital expert, which is just a fancy like HR strategist, people person, you know, a connector, a problem solver. And so that inspired me to figure out how to use my talent to, you know, solve the problems that women like her and others may face. So that's why I got started.
So pretty light, not a real strong connection.
I'm super mission focused.
No, I think, one, thank you for sharing, because I know that it's a personal story, and I think that, you know, that being able to bring that into the cause and the focus of your work, obviously, I mean, it's clear in seeing you, and I'm sure in listening, that it means something to you. It means a lot.
For sure.
This is kind of a similar question, but was there a tipping point in starting HireHer? Was there a moment where, you know, it kind of formalized around this company and this vision?
Yes, Adam. So I'm going to tell you the truth. Let me tell you. I have been working at a very high level a long time in, you know, human resource management, which is, and both in the public and private sector. And when you're doing that, you're trying to advance your career and you're a woman, you're just on the grind, you know, this is what I need to do to climb to the next level. It's tough, though, when you realize that that ceiling is there. And you can climb to a certain point, but it gets tough. And I believe sometimes we get focused on how do we break through, and we're not really embracing our own uniqueness and looking at what our experience is or what are our opportunities outside of our immediate environment. And so my sister motivated me, but I was kind of like not woke. I wasn't paying attention to my own circumstance. I wasn't paying attention to the circumstances of women around me.
Yeah.
But when I started having conversations about HireHer, when I started building the business and, meeting students and other professional women, it became quite clear to me that it was something that was bigger than her and bigger than me. And, kind of a little, she was ahead of her time in a lot of things. But when you think about the Me Too movement and a lot of things that are happening today, she was kind of saying like, hey sis, you don't want to, stay in the grind, and you need to do something about other people that are experiencing that. And so, super committed. That was the tipping point when I woke and recognized my own experience and started paying closer attention to the experiences of those around me.
Yeah. There's a phrase that I got from another coach, Bob Dunham, and he said, awareness creates choice.
Yeah.
And so, just listening to you describing it now, it sounds like there was sort of this new level of awareness, whether it was in yourself or the people around you, and you had a choice.
Yeah.
It's something else you brought up, and I like to talk about it when it comes up because I just think it's important to harp on it, is this idea of the Me Too movement. And I'm saying this as an outsider, obviously, not someone who's directly, immediately impacted by it. But there's this notion sometimes that this is a new conversation. And I don't think that personally it's a new conversation. It's just a more public conversation. It's been a conversation for a long time. It just hasn't been out in the open.
Right.
And amplified and inspected and dissected in the way it's happening now.
I agree. And I think that, for me personally, and as an African American woman, the experience is a little different.
Sure.
One of the things I've started talking about is stand up. Okay, so there's Me Too, time's up. I'm saying stand up because when you're an African American woman in the workplace, there's a lot of dynamics that are also at play. So, yes, it's good to dissect it, but it's also good to recognize your experience and acknowledge whether or not it's fair, whether it's right or wrong, and not be afraid to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, moving into action.
Yeah.
Talking is a piece of the pie, but it is not the whole pie. I'm excited to be in this conversation with you for a lot of reasons. Part of it is selfishly I get to learn.
Yeah.
And then also just sort of seeing what you're focusing on. Can you tell us a story about maybe a recent challenge that you've worked on or working through with HireHer?
Sure. And you know what? I have a great quote for this. If you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. That's Reid Hoffman, with the founder of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So, yeah. So, the HireHer app is available in the App Store. But, that's the version that I could afford to put together and launch without any funding or support, motivated by my own experience and that of my sister. So I was a little embarrassed by the first version of the app. The website we're getting ready to relaunch, and so I'm super excited for people to see that. It's really awesome. And then the app, we're going to update it incrementally, and it's just going to get better and better. So those are kind of some of the challenges that I'm working through with HireHer, like any other technologist. Yeah.
I think it's such a great reminder about the process. Like we see Twitter or we see Instagram or we see Facebook, these billion-dollar companies with celebrity CEOs, right? And it's so easy for us to forget how awkward those platforms were in the beginning or how unpolished they were. Like Twitter started out as like a text messaging relay service. Yeah. Like there was no app, and I think it's a really, really good thing to remember, for other founders that might be listening, or just if you're not a founder or in the startup space and you're at work, iteration. Yeah. And you need that feedback. You need to put things out there and get that real world feedback on, did you do something that works, that resonates? So I really appreciate you bringing up that story. Is there anything keeping you up at night around HireHer?
Yeah, I want to deliver on the promise I make. It's very important to me to honor my commitments. And so when I say that I want to create opportunities for folks to build deeper, faster connections with employers and one another in innovative industries, then I want to deliver on that. And so if there's anything in the product or solutions that create a challenge, then I want to make sure that we find ways to improve those as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. It's difficult when you are building a business and you don't have the benefit of, all of the resources that might be available to large companies, like you talked about, with teams of engineers and everyone looking at it. So I really am thankful and blessed to have the awesome team that I do have in place, and the folks that are working and supporting me. I have some of the brightest minds as part of the team. My brother, who is a neurosurgeon at Northwestern, has been supporting the mission of HireHer and helping advise on STEM professionals since the beginning. My brother is the chief technology officer, has an MBA from Booth and a bachelor's in computer science, and obviously super committed to the mission.
Just a little educated.
Yeah, just a little. But what's fun is that people say, how did you get your brother to help you? And I always say, I didn't really do it. It's a team effort, and they're supportive of what it means. Many of my family members actually work in these professions and have had similar experiences.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting sort of balance. I've done a lot of work with my family. I have a lot of sort of entrepreneurs in my family, and even the coaching work I do now is because of my mom, who's been in the executive coaching space my entire life. And I think it is an interesting balance of, are you passionate about the same things? Are you able to not separate the relationship, but understand when you're in a conversation that is about work, or when you're in a conversation that's about your life. And sometimes they get blended. It's unavoidable. But hopefully, the relationships that last in business, at least, are generally the ones where you can keep that focus. What's one of the more impactful pieces of advice you received as a founder of HireHer?
I like that question. And, there's so much excellent advice and good wisdom out there. One of the things I'll say is to really, I think it was the founder of Flickr that said, it's working on the right thing. I might be bumbling the quote a little bit, or make sure you're working on the right thing and not necessarily just working hard. So really zeroing in on the things I'm passionate about. And I went to a conference once, and it's kind of funny. A guy on the stage said, listen, when you're out there, you want to take their heads off, you want to rip their faces off. It doesn't matter what they're saying. And I kind of was like, I don't want to rip any faces off, this is kind of like how guys think, being a little, but it wasn't really that. It was, there's a Coke and there's a Pepsi. And so you can't get caught up in negativism around, there's somebody else that's doing this thing that kind of sounds like or looks a little bit like what you might be doing. And, that could discourage some folks from, being part of the ecosystem, really being embraced by those folks that are working with them. And when you put it in perspective and you take the faces off, this is how I just reimagined his statement, right, to make it beneficial. It was kind of like, well, there's how many companies out here competing over nature with their water, So it's perfectly appropriate for, a guy in New York, a girl in DC, someone in Ohio to be working on this diversity problem. Because I'll tell you, when I'm at these tech conferences with thousands of vendors, there might be 3 or 4 that look like me, and most of us aren't working on the same thing. So I look at it like HireHer is going to be the Pepsi of the thing, you know? So whoever the big guy is or whoever the big girl is, then I'm coming to rip your face off.
So you're Pepsi over Coca-Cola? We want to get into politics here. I really like that sort of, that emphasis on there are other people doing similar things and that's okay. And I just envision when I'm talking to people, if you live in a urban area or even a small town, there's probably more than one coffee shop. And there might even, especially in 2018, be a lot of new coffee shops. And it's not that they couldn't come into the market because Starbucks exists as an entity. There's a lot of opportunity. And in the diversity and inclusion space, and you know this definitely better than I do, there's definitely not an abundance of solutions yet.
Yeah.
You know, and there's not an abundance of people tackling it yet, you know.
Yeah.
It's something we talk about and we've talked about for a long time, but there is still a huge gap in the conversation and the actual action to moving towards change and the shifts that I'm sure that you're working towards and other people want to see.
Well, Adam, that's really inspiring. And it's an important message for people to grasp what you've said. And I mean, I think that's real. What I'll say is when the problem's solved, I'm not ripping off any faces, you know?
Yeah.
So when people have a problem with collaboration or supporting, or if people don't immediately see the value, then I just like to say, oh, okay, is the problem solved?
Yeah.
So I think that most of us that are in this business, and just like you that are coaching, when the problem's solved, you know, you move on to the next client, or when you've been business, and I think we all want to solve a problem.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So.
Yeah. So that's what we're out there doing.
That's what we're doing.
What's one thing you wish you knew in the beginning that you know now? Again, in the framework of HireHer.
In the framework of HireHer, I wish I knew how hard it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I knew that how important it would be to stay focused on the positive, to stay committed to the mission, to be able to step outside of my comfort zone. My dad always says, you know, Ruth is all about butterflies and rainbows and, you know, and really going out there and selling, really forming relationships when I might want to be a little shy.
Sure.
You know, I can form really deep relationships, but, you know, meeting a lot of people and in these conferences and things can be daunting.
Yeah.
So if I would have been prepared for that, if I would have had somebody like Adam to call and say, hey, Adam, like, I have this thing I need to do. Can you help me get ready for it? You know? I might have been better off. But getting in the space where I'm not misunderstood because of personality or style, and just being prepared for the hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the grind.
And the grind.
Meant in the most non-cliched ways, but the real ways. Yeah. I mean, my sort of ideal version of the world is, you know, people that are very interested in understanding each other, you know, and you find yourself in conversations when you have two people that are really committed to understanding the other person for who they are, much more meaningful and deep relationships and connections.
Yeah.
You know, so you going out to these conferences, in an ideal world, if everyone was meeting people where they are, the types of conversations that would come out for me in my mind would be mind-blowing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so maybe I won't see that in my lifetime, but if I'm a part of that process, I'm very happy about that. Is there a piece of advice that you would give yourself now, or that you know you should be sort of taking but might be struggling keeping with?
You know, I assume good intentions. I aim to walk the talk, and humble and kind always, no matter the circumstance, because I want to leave as an entrepreneur of HireHer. Hopefully I'll have a big exit one day and I will have solved this problem, but I want to leave a quality person and leave workforces in better positions and people better prepared for their work.
Who's a founder that you admire and why?
That's a really difficult question. I admire every founder that made their first 100, made their first 100,000, made their first million, and their first billion. Every single one. Congratulations. If you want to name the one person that I really admire is Oprah Winfrey, because to me, she's the original ecosystem builder, right?
Yeah.
And I admire the selfless acts at the same time that she did the super hard thing of making that money, right? So it's my wish for all of those fantastic founders to, you know, enjoy that type of success personally or professionally and live their dream life. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this element that comes up in conversations on the podcast and just in general where there's this glamorous view of being an entrepreneur, and I did air quotes, you can't see it, you know, that it's this amazing sort of transformational experience, and it's very sort of lighthearted, and you control your life, and you make lots of money and all this stuff. And the reality is, hopefully you get those things, you know, but controlling your schedule is different than having free time, you know, and making lots of money is different than making money the way you want to make money. And when you commit to it, like Oprah and other founders, you know, in the beginning and even at the top, it's still a ton of work.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes I would say, laser focus.
Yeah.
And you have to say no to a lot of things you want to say yes to in life.
Well, and I think that living your best life, and to go back to that quote, you know, from Catherine, the founder of Flickr, you know, it's doing the right work. And when you're doing the right work, I think that life is a lot more enjoyable. It's that whole thing of living a meaningful life and making a lasting difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's something you learned recently that blew your mind?
My mind is blown by how many brave women stand up in front of cameras and are willing to say, this is the experience I had.
Yeah.
And not afraid to ask questions and to be supportive of other women who have experienced similar challenges. We've come a long way as women in that regard. There were a time where we were less supportive of one another than we could have been. But I think what you see now and what you'll see in the future is women coming together and people listening to exactly what they have to say and asking the right questions. And they're not being afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, that is inspiring. It's motivating. And I hope that more women come forward and say, this is what my experience has been, and this is how it's made me feel.
Yeah.
And this is how it's impacted my life in negative ways.
Yeah.
Or this is how it's impacted my life in positive ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the for some reason, the three words that came to my mind were courage, bravery, and tenacity.
Right.
You know, like we talk about, you know, the bravery element, but there's this grit that I think is required to even open your mind to being that public about something that's so intense and personal.
It is, and you know, I'll tell you, they're so strong, and I'm just incredibly proud of every single one of them, and I feel like I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with all of those sisters. So even though I don't have my sister today, I have all of those women that are making a stand for her and for me and for every other woman that may have ever been, you know, treated unfairly.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's an interesting time to be in the world and in business with the conversations we're having. And my hope, and I think that just based on the work that you're doing, you know, that it turns into real things, that there are results, that there are actions, that there are shifts, that, you know, it goes beyond conversation and a 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
You know, and turns into policy and turns into trends at the executive level, like you were talking about at the beginning.
Well, that's what HireHer.com is all about.
Yeah.
That's what the app is all about. That's what I am all about, is creating opportunities and solutions for companies and people from the top down. Yeah.
This is a question I like asking. It's not necessarily about being a founder, but what's one thing the world is missing right now?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
What I'll say is this. There could be more patience. There could be more acceptance. There could be more understanding. But I'm encouraged.
Yeah. Yeah, no, patience, understanding, accepting are the elements in relationships that sort of mystify me when it's not present. It's something that I ask a lot in my work is, you know, what's one thing that someone wouldn't be able to tell about you just by looking at you? You know, and there are a lot of things for people. And I think that kind of digs into this, you know, understanding and patience. You know, when we talk about empathy also. Yeah. But we have so much inside of us. The story about your sister.
Yeah.
No one knows that just by looking at you.
Right.
You've decided to share and be public about it.
But... And I thank you for saying that, because not only do they not know it, but I don't know if they know how hard it is to tell the story. And the reason that I tell it is because she said it to me at a time where I wanted to talk about, what do you want me to do with the kids? Yeah. And so I feel compelled to share it because it was that important to her. But it is heart-wrenching and inspiring for me.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I tell a story, if someone walks away, I'm like, So it's hard.
Big exhale, yeah.
But that's the business.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson I've learned.
Yeah.
The company today is far more than that spark that created this huge light that's creating opportunity for so many people. So, yeah, it is what it is. But it's something I'm incredibly proud of. And I look forward to the future.
I mean, I'm excited about the future you're working towards and to see where you take HireHer or where HireHer takes you.
Yeah.
Ruth, thank you for being on the Founder's Mind. I think one thing that would be great to hear from you, sort of a parting thought or just information, is how do people follow you? How do people follow your work?
Yeah.
Do you have sort of a call to action or request that you want to put out there?
So the call to action is walk the talk, and that's for everyone, okay? But Adam, before I go into how they can reach me, I want to thank you for the time together today and for your feedback and your thoughts, because that's been also very helpful and meaningful for me. So thank you for that. And then if you want to follow me at HireHer LLC or www.hireher.com, or go to the App Store, search for HireHer.
And is that just iOS?
It's just iOS, yeah.
Excellent. Well, this has been awesome. I use that word a lot, but I mean it. And thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. If you like what you heard and want to hear Ruth speak in person, check out DC Startup Week's schedule for the week of September 24th, where you'll find Ruth hosting a panel called The Minority Majority. On the next episode, Daniel Pink, a New York Times bestselling author, TED Talk speaker, and fellow Northwestern alum, joins me to talk about his work and new book, When. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of the show, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. If you like what you're hearing on the show, take a moment to rate and review. And a little bonus, if you leave your social handle in the review, I'll be sure to give you a shout out on the Founder's Mind social channels. Until next time, take care.
In the world, going through all of this insanity and try to bring new ideas, make them a reality. Illuminate in the thoughts, make it a priority to implement what you learn, what you get is what you be. In a world full of noise, hard to find that clarity to try to lead subtly, never full of vanity, and try to change something small or try to change humanity. Power forward through the dark, Founder's Mind is what you see. Founder's Mind is what you see.